Well, good evening. This is Hound Dog Steve coming to you from Cajun on the 26th of July. And what I'd like to talk about here is the CETA deal. This is a Canadian-European trading agreement, and it was recently ratified, although a small province within Belgium called Wallonia has refused to ratify the agreement. And they're refusing to ratify the agreement for the same reason that the Irish are now becoming concerned, and that is the dispute resolution mechanism. Okay, so I am going to just read this article here. This is Prime Minister Trudeau in Ireland, and it says that the Irish are becoming concerned about the CETA deal. Okay, so I'll just read out this little highlighted piece here. But CETA has run into the same problems in this country as it has in many other parts of Europe. In particular, there has been increasing concern about the dispute resolution system. The agreement creates a new tribunal called the Investment Court System, which consists of a panel of judges that will settle disputes. Canada and the EU have hailed the ICS as a breakthrough in trade relations, and the EU has hoped that it would lead to the creation of an international trade court. Okay. However, critics say that the ICS gives too much power to foreign companies, not foreign countries, but foreign companies, which can sue governments if they change policies that hurt company operations. Opponents say that limits governments' abilities to protect the environment, workers' rights and healthcare, and some argue the ICS is a dangerous move towards private courts and away from domestic legal systems. Belgium has challenged the ICS at the European Court of Justice, and politicians in several countries, including France, Britain, have questioned the system. It's also a concern to many people in Ireland, such as Alice Mary Higgins, an independent Irish senator who backed the motion calling on Ireland to reject CETA. She sees the ICS as undermining domestic courts in Ireland and Canada. And she's worried about the so-called negative list aspects of CETA, which means it applies to every part of the local economy unless otherwise stated. That's different from a positive list, which would specify only areas where the agreement would apply. Awareness and concern about CETA is growing, she said in an interview on Tuesday. Ireland is pro-trade and welcomes increased trade with Canada, she added, but the message now that's beginning to come out is that you can be pro-trade and not be in favour of this exact model of trade. And that's exactly right. Okay, I can't emphasise enough that the whole idea of these huge international trade agreements, like NAFTA, like CETA, like TPP, like the Canada-China FIPA, it's all to bring about this dispute mechanism which takes you out of your national courts into a tribunal of corporate judges. Okay, now I happen to have read the Canada-China FIPA, and here it is here, look here, this is all the Canada-China FIPA that Canada signed under the Harper government. I got this from my friend Barry Devolin, who was the MP at the time, and here is the introduction about China. Anyways, this is all about how the Canada-China FIPA would work in reality. And the dispute mechanism in here is identical as it is in the TPP, that you will be going out of your country and into a tribunal. So how would this work? Well, let's take for example, we have a company in Canada called Husky Oil. It was recently purchased a few years ago by China, and so say for example China decides to bring in migrant Chinese workers to work in this oil refinery and makes them wear flip-flops and inappropriate clothing in wintertime to stay warm, and work basically without any kind of safety precautions whatsoever. So Canada steps in and says, hey, 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 we have labour laws in this country to protect our workers so that you don't take advantage of them. And we are not going to allow you to do that, and you have to pay them at least minimum wage in this country. So China or Husky Oil would then say, hey, well, you're cutting into our profit margin. You are affecting our operations. See how they use clever words? That you're affecting our operations and our operational efficiency. So we're going to lodge a claim against your country so that we can continue doing what we're doing. And if we get ruled against, you will be making up the shortfall in a financial sense. And so if this tribunal, like I say, rules in favour of Husky, then the migrant workers continue on and they continue the unsafe practices and environmental, non-environmental practices and this kind of stuff. And if the tribunal rules against Husky, Husky then then say, we want compensated for that, because we're going to suffer a material loss and we feel that we should be compensated to make up for that loss. And so we, the taxpayer, again, would be paying through our taxes to the government to compensate a foreign corporation to operate basically outside of the bounds of Canadian laws. I just can't emphasize to you how important this is, that we understand exactly what these deals mean to Canada, and it's basically a complete loss of sovereignty to corporate law. And unfortunately, the way this is done, you know, I mean, I had to beg for this. Okay, I had to beg for the opportunity to read something like 240 or 250 pages of legalese to understand what the Canada-China FIPA really meant to Canada. And that's a very tedious thing to do, and I can understand why people don't want to do it. But hopefully, you know, you'll listen to videos by people like me who, dare I say this out loud, I actually find it kind of interesting reading through some of these documents and the clever way they conjure words around to make it appear to say anything they want to say, and you won't really understand exactly what it's saying. It's devastatingly clever, and it's devious. It is devious. And they will do this with a smile on their face, and they'll say, everything is fine, and they'll pat you on the head, and as long as you go along being a happy little slave and don't ask too many questions, you'll be just fine. Well, if you like a situation where you have continued increases in taxation, where your wages can't keep up with inflation, and you enjoy environmental degradation by pollution from oil companies and other manufacturing corporations who are allowed to operate outside of the bounds of the law because your government signed deals like this on your behalf, then carry on not paying attention. But this eventually is going to roll over all countries like a steamroller, because most of our politicians, you know, Harper signed this deal. It was done in secret. The first announcement was made when Harper was in Russia talking to Vladimir Putin, and then it was very silently ratified by the cabinet only. And then those letters were exchanged with China, and there you go, we got a FIPA. And now we have Prime Minister Trudeau supporting CETA, talking about a TPP resurrection without the US, and so we have politicians on both sides of the aisle basically overtaken by corporations. And I'm going to get into this in a minute, because there's another little issue that I would like to talk about, and it's President Trump. In the meantime, be aware and be wary of these deals, and thank God the people in Wallonia and people in Britain and people in Ireland are waking up to the total con job of this corporate takeover of our countries, of our sovereignty. Okay, so I'd like you to please think about that. and comment below, join the conversation, and in the meantime, like and subscribe. And this is Hound Dog Steve signing off. Have a great week. Good night now.